The call came in at 9:14 p.m. The dispatcher would later describe it as calm, controlled, almost bored. The man on the line identified himself immediately, not by name, by status. "I'm a private citizen," he said, "but I'm also a billionaire. And my driver is refusing to comply." The dispatcher paused. That pause mattered. In this city, wealth had weight. It bent time. It shortened lines. It changed tone. When a billionaire called the police, the call didn't wait. It moved. Inside the black luxury sedan, the driver sat still, hands on the steering wheel, engine running, dash lights glowing softly. His name was Daniel Reyes. He had been driving for the same man for 7 years. No complaints, no incidents, no record, until tonight. "He's being aggressive," the billionaire told the dispatcher. "He's refusing to take me where I asked. I feel threatened. Threatened. By a man who hadn't raised his voice. By a man who hadn't moved. By a man who was still recording everything." The dashboard camera had been installed years earlier. Company policy. Insurance requirement. Always on. Always recording. The billionaire knew it was there. He forgot something else. Cameras don't care who's rich. "Pull over," the billionaire said from the back seat. Daniel didn't turn around. "I can't," he replied calmly. That was the moment the call was made. The dispatcher didn't hear the rest. Didn't hear the silence that followed. Didn't hear the way Daniel's breathing changed. Didn't hear the sound of the billionaire leaning forward. The camera did. By the time officers were dispatched, the story was already written. A powerful man. A disobedient driver. A potential threat. The city had heard this story before. At 9:21 p.m., the car stopped beneath a streetlight. Daniel placed the car in park. He turned off the engine. And for the first time he spoke directly to the man behind him. "I'm recording," he said. The billionaire smiled. "The police are on their way, and the truth is already captured." The patrol cars arrived without sirens. 2 of them. Slow. Deliberate. The kind of approach meant to avoid escalation. But escalation had already been chosen. "Step out of the vehicle," the officer said. Not to the billionaire. To the driver. Daniel complied immediately. Hands visible. Movement slow. The dash camera kept rolling. The billionaire spoke first. "He's been hostile all evening," he said. "He refused instructions. I feared for my safety." The officer nodded. He wrote it down. Daniel was not asked to speak. No one asked why the car had stopped. No one asked what instruction had been refused. No one asked why a man with a spotless record would suddenly snap. The camera knew. Daniel felt the cold metal close around his wrists. He did not resist. He did not protest. He looked once, briefly, toward the car. Toward the camera. He stepped out of the car. Adjusted his jacket. Made a call of his own. "Handle this," he said quietly. The police report would later describe Daniel as uncooperative, aggressive, non-compliant. The dash camera described something else entirely. The report is filed. The driver is arrested. The footage has not been reviewed. The dashboard camera footage was uploaded automatically. No one pressed a button. No one made a decision. At 9:47 p.m., the file synced to the private fleet server, time-stamped, encrypted, and stored under a folder labeled Routine Transit. That label mattered, because routine files are rarely opened. Daniel Reyes sat on a metal bench under fluorescent lights that hummed without rhythm. His wrists were sore where the cuffs had been. He replayed the moment in his head, not the arrest, not the streetlight, but the sentence that came before everything changed. "I can't take that route." He'd said it calmly, professionally, because the route the billionaire demanded crossed a construction zone that had been flagged earlier that day for safety concerns. Because company policy was explicit. Because he had driven that man for 7 years and never once said no until tonight. The billionaire's security team had already begun working the phones. A driver refusing orders was an inconvenience. A driver recording the truth was a risk. The goal was simple. Make the problem disappear before morning. At 11:06 p.m., the footage was accessed. Not by police. Not by a prosecutor. By an IT technician named Lena Morris, contracted to maintain the fleet's digital records. She wasn't looking for anything. She was running a routine integrity check. And then she stopped. Lena rewound. Watched again. The audio was clear. Too clear. The billionaire's voice, sharp, impatient, escalating. Daniel's voice, measured, steady, repeating the same explanation. "I'm responsible for your safety. I can't violate policy. I'm recording for both of us. No threats. No aggression. No refusal, only restraint. At 9:12 p.m., 2 minutes before the police were called, the billionaire leaned forward. The camera caught his face in the rearview mirror. "You work for me," he said. "And I can ruin you." Lena's hand froze on the mouse. She checked the police report that had already been uploaded to the system. Driver became hostile. Driver refused lawful instructions. The words did not match the sound. Dash cameras don't interpret. They don't contextualize. They don't soften language. They record tone, timing, intent. And intent was now undeniable. Lena knew protocol. Footage involving an arrest was supposed to be archived, not shared. But protocol assumes honesty upstream. This wasn't a technical issue. It was a moral one. At 11:41 p.m., Lena sent a single message. No commentary. No accusation. Just a link. Subject line. Incident footage. Immediate review recommended. Recipients. Corporate legal. Fleet compliance. City oversight liaison. She did not include the billionaire. That omission would later be called strategic. By morning, the file had been watched 17 times. Paused. Rewound. Played again in silence. Each viewing removed another layer of doubt. Daniel was fingerprinted at 2:03 a.m. He asked one question. "Did you watch the video?" The officer avoided eye contact. "That's not up to me." At 7:18 a.m., a senior official in the mayor's office viewed the footage. At 7:31 a.m., the police chief did the same. At 7:44 a.m., the word problem entered several conversations at once. Unaware. Certain the story would hold. Certain the city would listen to him the way it always had. By 8:02 a.m., 2 versions of the same night existed. One was official. Type. Signed. Stamp. The other was recorded. Unedited. Unforgiving. Only one could survive. The arrest report was clean. Too clean. It described a non-compliant driver, a fearful passenger, a verbal escalation. The tone was neutral. The conclusions were not. Daniel Reyes was listed as the aggressor. The billionaire's name appeared 12 times. Always followed by victim. Paper tells stories people want preserved. Video tells stories people forget to erase. And the two did not match. At 8:47 a.m., a closed-door meeting was called at police headquarters. No calendar entry. No minutes recorded. Present. Deputy Chief of Police. Internal Affairs Captain. City Legal Counsel. 2 senior officers from the arresting precinct. Absent. The arresting officers. The driver. The billionaire. The footage played on a large screen. No one spoke. At 9:01 p.m. on the footage, Daniel says, "For both our protection, I'm recording." The Internal Affairs Captain paused the video. "Was this disclosed in the report?" she asked. No one answered. At 9:12 p.m., the billionaire's voice sharpened. "You work for me. And I can ruin you." City Legal Counsel shifted in his seat. "That's not reflected," he said carefully. No one argued. At 9:14 p.m., the billionaire says, "If you don't pull over right now, I'll call the police and say you're threatening me." The room went still. The captain rewound it, played it again, then asked the only question that mattered. "So the call came after the threat?" "Yes." The call did not precede fear. Fear followed leverage. "False report," someone said quietly. "Not accusation. Classification." At 9:26 a.m., Internal Affairs opened a preliminary inquiry. At 9:31 a.m., the arresting officers were notified. At 9:44 a.m., Daniel Reyes' case status was flagged. Not dismissed. Flagged. The system hesitates before it corrects itself. Daniel was still wearing the same clothes. Same scuffed shoes. Same expression. Controlled, unreadable. A public defender sat across from him. "There's video," she said. Daniel nodded once. "I know." He didn't say thank you. Because experience had taught him something. Evidence doesn't equal justice. Not yet. At 10:17 a.m., the billionaire's assistant knocked on his office door. "There's an issue," she said. He didn't look up. "With what?" "The footage." That made him pause. "What footage?" he asked. The assistant hesitated. "The car footage. It's being reviewed." The billionaire leaned back slowly. He remembered the camera. He remembered the mirror. He remembered the sentence he'd spoken without thinking. Not to his lawyer. Not yet. To the police chief. The call went unanswered. By noon, the story inside City Hall had changed. Not publicly. Privately. Language shifted from incident to liability. From driver misconduct to procedural concern. From routine arrest to exposure. The truth is documented, but power is deciding how much of it can be seen. Daniel Reyes had learned long ago that panic was expensive. It made people talk when they shouldn't, move when they should stay still, explain when silence was safer. So when the cell door closed behind him again that morning, Daniel did not ask questions. He waited. Before he was a driver, Daniel was something else. A logistics specialist in the military. 6 years. 2 deployments. Convoys where one wrong turn meant fire. Orders where just do it could get people killed. He learned then that authority was not always right. But protocol existed for a reason. And breaking it always left fingerprints. The billionaire had demanded a detour through a closed underpass. Daniel had received the alert hours earlier. Structural inspection incomplete. Heavy equipment active. No civilian traffic recommended. Company policy was explicit. Driver discretion over passenger preference. Especially when safety was involved. Daniel didn't raise his voice. He didn't argue. He stated the rule. That was his mistake. Power expects obedience, not professionalism. When Daniel refused, the billionaire didn't hear policy. He heard defiance. And defiance to men like him was personal. At 11:36 a.m., Internal Affairs requested a formal interview with Daniel. He was escorted, not cuffed this time, to a small conference room. 2 chairs. A recorder. A woman from Internal Affairs named Captain Lauren Gwynn. She didn't open with accusations. She opened with something else. "I've watched the footage," she said. Daniel's shoulders lowered slightly. Not relief. Recognition. "Why didn't you react?" she asked. Daniel looked at the table. "Because reacting would have helped him," he said. Daniel explained everything. The alert. The policy. The tone shift. The threat. He didn't embellish. Didn't speculate. Didn't assign motive. He stuck to sequence. Top. Words. Facts. The way the camera had. Captain Nguyen had seen this before. Not this billionaire. But this structure. Influence weaponized as fear. Police used as leverage. Reports written to justify authority after the fact. The difference this time was video. Clear. Undeniable. The arresting officers were interviewed next. Separately. One said the driver seemed tense. The other said uncooperative. Neither could explain why Daniel never raised his voice. Neither mentioned the threat captured on video. Neither had reviewed the footage before filing the report. That omission mattered. At 1:02 p.m., Captain Nguyen typed a single word into the internal case notes. Discrepancy. In Internal Affairs language, that word is a warning shot. By afternoon, the billionaire's legal team was active. Calls were made. Meetings requested. Language softened. He now described the incident as a misunderstanding, a stressful evening, an unfortunate escalation. None of those phrases appeared on the footage. City legal ran numbers. Wrongful arrest. False reporting. Civil exposure. The potential settlement climbed by the hour. And that was before the footage went public. At 5:18 p.m., Daniel Reyes was released. No charges. No apology. Just a form stamped pending review. He stepped outside. The air felt different. Not lighter. Just honest. Daniel turned it on. 37 missed calls. 1 voicemail. From an unknown number. "You should have just driven," the voice said. The line went dead. Daniel saved the message. He knew better than to delete evidence. Daniel is free, but the city is now exposed and the billionaire is starting to panic. Power doesn't panic immediately. It recalculates. By sunrise the next day, the billionaire's publicist had drafted a statement. It never mentioned a threat, a camera, a false report. Instead it spoke of concern for personal safety, respect for law enforcement, an internal review. It ended with the word regret. Regret is useful. It sounds human without admitting guilt. The footage didn't care about regret. It had timestamps. Seconds. Milliseconds. A sequence that couldn't be massaged into something softer. Every denial now had a clock attached to it. At 8:14 a.m., Internal Affairs escalated the inquiry. That didn't mean sirens. It meant silence. No emails. No calls returned. Because when IA goes quiet, it's building something. One of the arresting officers requested sick leave. The other called a union rep. Reports were reread. Body cams rechecked. People realized what they hadn't written mattered as much as what they had. Daniel stayed home. Not because he was afraid. Because experience told him visibility invited pressure. He backed up the footage. Twice. Cloud. External drive. Encrypted folder. Then he waited. At 11:03 a.m. Daniel's phone rang. Human resources. They used careful language. Administrative leave. Non-punitive. Standard procedure. Daniel asked one question. Am I still employed? Pause. Yes, the woman said. For now. At 12:46 p.m., a file appeared in a reporter's inbox. No sender. No note. Just a video clip. 37 seconds long. The threat. Clear as glass. By 2 p.m. the headline was live. Dashboard camera shows billionaire threatening driver before arrest. No adjectives. No speculation. Just footage. The mayor's office called an emergency meeting. Police leadership issued a statement promising transparency. The Billionaire's Foundation postponed its annual gala. Sponsors asked questions. Boards don't like surprises, especially recorded ones. Control. For the first time in decades, the story wasn't his to shape. Comments flooded in. People noticed the calm voice of the driver, the escalation from the passenger, the timing of the call. Patterns emerged, not just about him, about how often this worked. He didn't celebrate. He muted the TV, because attention is loud, and loud things attract consequences. That night his phone buzzed again. Unknown number. This time the voice was different. Lower. Measured. You don't understand who you're messing with. Daniel didn't respond. He forwarded it to his attorney. Evidence, not emotion. At 9:22 p.m., Captain Nguyen authorized a subpoena. Not for Daniel. For phone records. The billionaires. And the officers. Calls. Messages. Timing. Because once power lies on camera, it usually lies elsewhere too. The footage is public, but the deeper truth is still buried in the data. Video tells you what happened. Data tells you how often. Call logs don't care who you are. They don't recognize titles. They don't respect donations. They don't flinch at reputations. They only answer 3 questions. Who called? When? For how long? And once you line those answers up, patterns begin to bleed through the page. At 8:03 a.m., the billionaire's legal team received notice. Limited scope. Targeted request. Non-negotiable. Phone records for the night of the arrest. The following 72 hours. Selected prior incidents involving law enforcement contact. The phrase that mattered most was buried near the bottom. Including deleted or archived communications. That's where confidence starts to fracture. The senior partner didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He just slid the printed records across the table. Explain this, he said. The official report stated the billionaire called emergency services at 9:16 p.m. But the logs showed something else. At 9:07 p.m., 9 minutes earlier, there was a call. Not to 911. To a direct line. A number flagged as non-public. Belonging to a precinct commander. Duration, 42 seconds. Who is that? The lawyer asked. The billionaire didn't answer. Because explaining relationships like that requires honesty. And honesty had already left the building. At 9:10 p.m. another call. This time to a private security consultant. The same firm used by his foundation. The same firm staffed by retired officers. Duration, 1 minute 18 seconds. The lawyer circled it in red. You were coordinating, he said. Not accusing. Concluding. Captain Nguyen lined up 3 sets of records. The billionaire's phone. The arresting officer's phones. Dispatch logs. She didn't rush. She let the timestamp speak. One officer had placed a call at 9:11 p.m. Not logged in the report. Not mentioned in testimony. It went to the same precinct commander. Duration, 28 seconds. That wasn't coincidence. That was choreography. This wasn't the first time. The data showed similar sequences. Minor disputes. Calls to private lines. Rapid police response. Reports favoring one side. Names changed. The structure didn't. At 11:42 a.m., Captain Nguyen updated the case classification. It was no longer about Daniel Reyes. It was about process abuse. That word carries weight. It pulls in auditors, oversight boards, people who don't care about headlines, only compliance. His attorney called him that afternoon. They're looking beyond you now, she said. Daniel leaned back in his chair. That's when it gets dangerous, he replied. This wasn't a scandal. It was a map. A diagram of how influence bent procedure without breaking it enough to trigger alarms. Until now. That evening he released a second statement. Shorter. Sharper. He denied coordination. Denied intent. Denied memory. Memory is a convenient thing to lose. Logs don't forget. At 11:58 p.m., one more call appeared. Outgoing. From the Billionaire. To a number that made Captain Nguyen stop typing. City Hall. The logs show influence reaching beyond police and into politics. There are calls you make because you're afraid. And calls you make because you're used to being answered. The Billionaire's call at 11:58 p.m. was the second kind. It wasn't the mayor. It was closer. A senior policy advisor. The kind of position that never appears on ballots but touches everything that does. Duration. 2 minutes, 11 seconds. Long enough to explain. Short enough to deny. Call logs don't capture tone. They don't record phrases like, "We have a situation. This can't become public. We've supported each other before." But investigators know the rhythm. They've heard it in other cases. The advisor didn't initiate the call. That mattered. But he also didn't report it. That mattered more. Silence in government is rarely neutral. At 12:14 a.m., an email was sent from City Hall to the police department. Subject line, status check. One sentence. Please advise on any developments regarding last night's incident. No instructions. No pressure. Just presence. That's how influence moves without fingerprints. Captain Nguyen added City Hall communications to the scope. That single decision changed everything. Because once politics enters the file, oversight multiplies. At 9:05 a.m., the Civilian Oversight Board received a briefing. They weren't shown the footage yet. Just the logs. The timestamps. The call chains. One member said it out loud. This looks like access being used as authority. By noon, City Hall Council was involved. The advisor claimed. The call was informational. No directives were given. No follow-up occurred. The email said otherwise. Not explicitly. But context rarely needs spelling out. He thought City Hall was a shield. He didn't realize it was now a mirror. Everything he touched reflected. At 3:22 p.m., Daniel was asked to return for another interview. This time there were more people in the room. Not adversarial. Just careful. He answered the same way he always had. Chronology. Words. Silence where silence belonged. Did this feel rehearsed? Someone asked. Daniel paused. Then nodded once. Yes, he said. People stopped writing. Because rehearsed implies precedent. It implies comfort. It implies this wasn't new. At 6:41 p.m., authorization came through. Phone records. Text. Deleted messages. City Hall doesn't like its phones examined. But once the door opens, it doesn't close quietly. That night, he snapped at a staffer. Yelled. Smashed a glass. Power does that when it senses limits. Press inquiries increased. Advocacy groups organized. Lawyers circled. What started as a traffic dispute had become something else. Test case. The phones are about to reveal how far the influence really went. Deletion is not erasure. It's delay. That hitting delete makes things disappear. That once a message is gone from a screen, it's gone from the world. That belief has protected powerful people for decades. Until data stopped agreeing. The phones were examined in a windowless room 2 floors below City Hall. No names on the door. No Wi-Fi. No shortcuts. Just analysts' cables and time. The Billionaire's phone. The advisor's phone. The officer's phones. 3 devices. 1 timeline. It doesn't look for messages. It looks for ghosts. Fragments. Metadata. Artifacts left behind when something was removed. Every tap leaves a bruise. At 10:41 a.m., an analyst froze his screen. There's something here, he said. A deleted text. Timestamp 9:09 p.m., 2 minutes after the first private call. Sender, the Billionaire. Recipient, the precinct commander. Recovered content. Handle this cleanly. 4 words. Enough to move a system. No one spoke. Because cleanly isn't instruction. It's expectation. And expectations shape behavior. Another recovery. This one from the advisor's phone. Deleted. Timestamp 12:02 a.m. Recipient, the same commander. Let me know when it's resolved. Not if, when. 3 actors. 1 sequence. No written orders. No explicit threats. Just coordination. The kind that hides behind familiarity. 1 phone revealed a draft message. Never sent. But saved automatically. Subject is compliant. Proceeding as discussed. Drafts don't lie. They're written before caution steps in. At 1:17 p.m., Captain Nguyen updated the classification again. From systemic concern to potential coordinated misconduct. That word does something. It invites prosecutors. By mid-afternoon, a special prosecutor was assigned. Independent, external, unimpressed. He didn't ask about feelings. He asked about evidence. And the evidence was no longer circumstantial. His attorney met him in person this time. "This is bigger than you," she said. Daniel nodded. "I figured," he replied. "What do you want to do?" He didn't hesitate. "Tell the truth. All of it." His legal team finally stopped softening language. "You are now personally exposed," the senior partner said. "Civil liability, criminal referral, reputational collapse." The billionaire asked one question. "Can we stop this?" The answer came quietly. No. Rumors spread. Leaks multiplied. Journalists sensed blood in the water. Because this wasn't just about a driver. It was about how easily systems bent for the right voice. Daniel didn't ask for it. Didn't want it. But the footage made him one. Controlled. Recorded. A mirror held up to power. The evidence is complete, but exposure has a cost and someone is about to pay it. Systems rarely confess. They compensate. By the end of the week, the evidence stack was no longer thin. It was undeniable. Footage, call logs, recovered texts, contradictory reports. Too many truths pointing in the same direction. And when that happens, institutions look for something else. Relief. Friday morning, 9 a.m. sharp. A press release from the police department. Carefully worded. Measured. An internal review has identified procedural failures by a supervising officer, who has been placed on administrative leave pending further investigation. One name. One badge. A precinct commander. This wasn't accountability. It was containment. By isolating one individual, the system hoped to satisfy public outrage, protect the structure. By time. It was a familiar move. And it almost worked. The commander read the release alone in his office. He didn't look shocked. He looked betrayed. Because he understood the rules. You take the calls. You smooth things over. You keep the machine running. And in return, the machine protects you. Except this time it didn't. Within hours, the commander retained counsel. The lawyer read the file. Then leaned back. "They're going to let you carry this," she said. The commander swallowed. "But I wasn't acting alone." The lawyer nodded. "I know." At 3:42 p.m., an affidavit was submitted. Not public. Yet. In it, the commander detailed years of informal calls. Expectations set by donors and officials. A culture of helping when asked. And then he named names. Then again. Then slowly closed the folder. This was no longer about misconduct. It was about structure. His phone stopped ringing. Board members postponed meetings. One sponsor quietly stepped back. When people stop returning calls, it means they're calculating distance. From his apartment, Daniel watched the press conference. He didn't feel vindicated. He felt something colder. Because he recognized the move. The system was trying to end the story early. That evening, a second document was filed. A cooperation agreement. Conditional. Explosive. The commander would testify. Fully. Emergency meetings. Closed doors. Phones buzzing non-stop. The advisor who took the 11:58 call stopped sleeping. Because testimony doesn't care about loyalty. It cares about survival. At 8:11 p.m., the prosecutor authorized subpoenas. Not internal. Criminal. The line had been crossed. They thought Daniel was the weakest point. The quiet driver. The employee. The man without power. But he had something they didn't expect. A record. A timeline. And nothing to lose. The fall guy has decided to talk, and his words are about to pull everyone else down with him. Rooms change when people swear to tell the truth. The air tightens. Words slow down. Every sentence starts to matter. The hearing wasn't televised. Yet. A long table. Microphones. Legal counsel on both sides. The precinct commander sat alone. No uniform. No badge. Just a man with a stack of choices behind him. He started years earlier. With how the calls began. Never orders. Never threats. Just familiarity. That was the phrase, he said. Not written anywhere. But understood. Donors. Executives. Political allies. They didn't ask for favors. They asked for help. And help came with expectations. A traffic stop. A misunderstanding. A call from City Hall. A nudge. Nothing illegal, he told himself. Just discretion. That's how it always starts. He didn't deny it. The calls came in. The billionaire. The advisor. The officer. He connected them, smoothed the edges, let the arrest proceed, because that was the path of least resistance. The prosecutor's voice was steady. The commander paused. "I knew it was thin," he said. "That was enough. Not as rumor, as fact, as a participant. Someone who understood how the system responded to his voice." The advisor was mentioned next. The late-night call, the follow-up email, the expectation of resolution. The room shifted, because now politics had fingerprints. When Daniel spoke, it was brief. He didn't accuse. He recounted. Policy, timing, the threat, the camera, the restraint. He spoke like someone used to procedure, because he was. The prosecutor asked Daniel one final question. "Why did you keep recording?" Daniel looked up. "Because I knew I wouldn't be believed otherwise." The room went silent. It landed harder than any accusation, because it wasn't anger. It was preparation. He didn't fight it anymore. "This system rewards silence," he said, "and punishes people like him for speaking." He nodded toward Daniel. That sound, paper meeting leather, was final. He had what he needed. Charges were drafted. Not yet filed, but real. The Billionaire's attorneys requested meetings. City Hall requested delays. Neither would get what they wanted. The testimony is complete, but consequences are about to go public. Truth changes shape when it leaves closed rooms. Inside a hearing, it's measured. Outside, it's seismic. The transcript didn't spill. It was released. At 7 a.m., a full summary appeared on the Civil Oversight Board's website. Redacted where required. Unedited where it mattered. By 7:12, journalists had it. By 7:30, the city did. Testimony reveals coordinated influence in billionaire driver arrest. No adjectives. No outrage. Just facts stacked neatly on top of one another. Morning radio hosts stopped joking. TV anchors stopped speculating. Because this wasn't rumor anymore. It was sworn. Not the clip. Not the excerpt. The entire dashcam video aired that afternoon. Uncut. People noticed things they hadn't before. The calmness of the driver. The escalation of the passenger. The moment power decided to call for backup. Silence became the loudest sound in the room. Not literally, yet, but sponsors withdrew. A university announced it would review naming rights. The foundation postponed its gala, again. Distance became fashionable. The advisor resigned at 2:18 p.m. The statement cited personal reasons. No one believed it, because resignation is the loudest confession politics allows. At 4:41 p.m., the prosecutor stepped to the podium. False reporting. Conspiracy to misuse authority. Obstruction. Names were read, including the billionaires. The room inhaled together. He didn't want to be on camera, but he stayed, because some stories need witnesses. Not scandal. Not injustice. Pattern. People shared stories. Quiet ones. Old ones. Ones without footage. Until now. Policy reviews announced. Body cam mandates expanded. Direct line access restricted. Small changes. Late changes. But changes nonetheless. That evening he issued a final statement. No denial. No apology. Just silence after. Because sometimes power realizes it can't talk its way out. No escort. No spotlight. Just a door closing behind him. He powered off his phone. For the first time in weeks, he didn't back anything up. A reporter asked him one last question as he left. "What do you hope comes from this?" Daniel paused, then said quietly, "That the next person doesn't need a camera. Justice doesn't arrive all at once. It comes in fragments, in footnotes, in what changes quietly after the noise moves on." There were no dramatic perp walks. No shouting crowds. The billionaire entered the courthouse through a side door. He left through settlement language. Plea negotiations replaced posturing. Because once evidence is time-stamped, denial becomes expensive. No jury was needed to decide the truth. The facts had already done that. Charges were reduced, then resolved. False reporting acknowledged. Obstruction conceded. Civil damages paid quietly. No prison sentence. But consequences that couldn't be erased. Board seats lost. Advisory roles ended. Invitations stopped coming. Power didn't disappear. It narrowed. Policies changed. Direct lines were audited. Call logs monitored. Dashcams mandated. Not because of outrage. Because documentation had embarrassed the process. And systems hate being embarrassed. He didn't return to duty. He testified again. And again. Each time a little more tired. Each time a little more honest. He traded silence for leniency, and learned how heavy that silence had been. It always does. New advisors, new emails, same hallways. But one rule stuck. No undocumented status checks. It was small, but it mattered. He didn't become famous. He didn't write a book. He didn't want to be a symbol. He went back to work. Different company. Same discipline. Same quiet professionalism. He kept it, not out of fear, out of habit. Because some protections shouldn't be optional. Months later, someone asked him if he'd do anything differently. Daniel thought about the night, the refusal, the call, the cell door, the footage. No, he said. I'd still hit record. Not the billionaire's name, not the charges, but the video. A calm voice against rising authority. A system caught in its own reflection. It doesn't collapse when challenged. It adjusts, unless something holds it in place. Something impartial. Something time-stamped. In a city built on influence, the thing that finally told the truth wasn't a witness. It was a camera that didn't blink.